Hello and welcome to the Gifts of Service interview series. This project is brought to you by the Ontario Region of Narcotics Anonymous Fellowship Development Team. In this series, we engage in meaningful conversations with NA members about recovery, service, and the NA program. We've reached out to a wide range of addicts with various amounts of clean time and diverse life experiences, but they all have this in common. They love Narcotics Anonymous and are passionate about carrying our message of hope to the addict who still suffers. For our second episode, I'm joined by 3 NA members who are also members of the LGBT community. In this panel discussion, we dive into topics like sponsorship and feeling a part of.
Hi, I'm Andrea B. They, them pronouns. I have 12 years of consecutive abstinence.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jesse B. My pronouns are he, him, and my clean date is May 31st, 2015.
Hey, it's Stephen K. I've got my pronouns are he, him, and I've got just over 7 years of clean time.
Fantastic. So glad all of you are here. I want to start, Andrea, by asking you how you first experienced the NA message.
I first experienced the NA message in New Westminster, British Columbia, and my introduction to NA was interesting. My stepmother worked at a clinic downtown that was trying to cure hepatitis C. So she was a liver nurse, and I hadn't connected any dots at any point in time, but there's a lot of people who are actively in recovery who have hep C from using dirty needles or sharing needles, or because it happens. It's a thing. And I had told my family when I was, not fully cognizant of my actions that I was in fact using substances to a destructive level. And their response was to figure out how to help. So she started asking her clients and patients and stuff like, what do I do? So she found NA for me. And my dad took me to my first meeting. We went to the wrong church the first time. And we stumble into the meeting. Well, not stumble, anyway. We get to the meeting, and of course I've missed all the readings. I've missed how to introduce myself. I've missed all the primer information to be a good addict, present and accounted for. And the format of that meeting was the first half was tag, and then it was jump in sharing. So I just sat down, and somebody finished talking, and they said, thank you, person. I think his name was Keith. And he's like, hey, how about you? And I'm like, I'm Andrea. I smoke crack, and I think it's a problem. Because I didn't, right? I missed all anyway. And then I'm just like, I don't know, I'm here. And then, how about you? And then that member picked a member, and they shared, and they're like, I welcome everybody here who feels comfortable giving this newcomer their number to do so, and also take her number, because at that point in time I hadn't figured out the they them part of it. And yeah, that was my crash course. I've been showing up ever since.
Thanks, Andrea. And how about you, Jesse?
So I first experienced the NA message back in 2010. That was my first introduction to recovery. That's when I had went to rehab. And before then, I didn't even think people lived clean. I just knew the whole other lifestyle. I was involved in the trafficking lifestyle and whatnot. And I remember attending my first meeting, and I just felt just this sense of relief. It seemed like my whole life I had tried avoiding admitting that I was an addict. And it seemed like the moment that I admitted that, I was finally able to accept it. And it felt like I could breathe. I remember feeling like a sense of belonging. I was very shame-based when I first came into the program. So I always felt like if people really knew me, they wouldn't like me. And I remember listening to people share, and wow, I could completely relate and identify. And the things that people were saying, because I was so shame-based, it was things that I never wanted to say. And so I could relate with like-minded people. And I've also done a prison sentence as a result of trafficking. So I've done pen time. And in there, volunteers would come in any members from the community would come in and put on meetings. And I thought, wow, even in there at that point, I had completely lost like everything, my freedom and myself included. And just seeing people come in and carry the message, even through like walls, like prison walls, it was just so uplifting. And it was just amazing experience for me.
And Stefan, how about you? How did you first experience the NA message?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And it's for me, I actually started in another fellowship and didn't really know anything about NA. I think I had about a year in another fellowship, and then a friend of mine was like, "Hey, you should come check out this NA thing." And I was curious because I had multiple substances that I had used in active addiction, and I was like, "Okay, cool, yeah, I'm willing to try that out, see how it goes." And I really, really liked the focus on like the disease of addiction rather than just one specific substance, because for me it wasn't the substance in particular, it was like the external thing that would make me feel whole or make me feel different or better or good in some way. And that was a big challenge that I had, and even like after getting clean have used other things like not substances, but like the gym, work, food, throwing myself into these things, or even relationships that might not be healthy for me. And so that that message really resonated with me, and it was interesting. I kind of came in and out of actually doing the program. Would go to meetings, but I wasn't doing step work, and so I did my step work I'm doing my step work for the first time in NA specifically now, where I had done gone through the 12 steps in the other program. So yeah, that's kind of how I first interacted with NA and heard about the message, and it really resonated with me.
What was your first experience being of service in NA? And we'll start with Andrea.
My first experience of being of service in NA, I honestly don't know. Like my very first act of service, because I've learned so much about service since. Like there were things I did at the beginning that, like setting up the meeting. Okay, so that's it. Yes. Okay, setting up chairs at the 8 a.m. meeting, because obviously I wasn't sleeping. So I'd get to the 8 a.m. meeting and I'd sit there until somebody showed up to unlock the door and set up the chairs and get out the thingy with all the pamphlets in it and organize those. And yeah, and I do remember, like, I have a purpose here. I have a reason to be here. And that made it so much easier for me to participate. And yeah. And I've had a lot of different service experiences since then with like titles and stuff. And I love sharing about how service is just showing up sometimes.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. That's one of the things that Catherine Kay mentioned in our first episode is, talks about in The Living Clean how, service is not a position on a committee, it's a posture in the heart. And you mentioned that it's an 8 a.m. meeting. Like locally around here, our experience with morning meetings hasn't been very successful, but tell me a little bit about that. Are they really successful out west?
The main reason that the 8 a.m. meeting was successful in my neighborhood specifically was there was a plethora of recovery houses and second stage housing that were all interconnected. There was a men's and a women's, and they had to go on the weekdays. So of course the Saturday morning 8 a.m. was my favorite, because only the ones who wanted to be there were there. And just as a member of NA who wasn't in a recovery house, because I didn't know about them, so I didn't I didn't try to get in, and like it took me a while to figure out what was going on. But yeah, it was mostly successful because they were told they had to go get some recovery houses, I guess, is how to make 8 a.m. meetings happen.
Right. Yeah, I'll get right on that. Jesse, what was your first experience being of service in NA?
My first experience of being of service. So when I first joined the program, I joined a home group and I got active right away. I got a sponsor who is very active in the program, so that helped me a lot. A lot of times he would just call me and tell me to meet him places. And for my home group, like I would show up early, set up the chairs, make the coffee. I loved greeting people. That's something that I love doing. I love shaking hands and I love giving hugs. I've noticed that that kind of stuff really like lights me up inside. And I also remember a time when my sponsor had asked me to go talk to these three guys, and I had spoke to them, and I guess two of them had ended up going back out, right? So I was having a conversation with my sponsor, and this was when I was new in recovery, right? And I felt like I had failed, and that's when I really learned the importance of just showing up, right, and leaving the results and turning everything over to my higher power.
Can you tell me about some of your most memorable service experiences? We'll start with Andrea.
Okay, I have a fast answer for this one. Like it's right at the top of my head. My favorite service experience to date was for some reason, I was at area just because I like going to area, and they were looking for an activities committee chair. And I don't like dances. I don't like loud noises. I don't like balloons. I don't like crowds. So of course I stood for the position. Um, my sponsor was there and she says, "Don't you think you should have asked your sponsor?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you think?" She's like, "Bit late, but go for it." Um, and uh, and then like I did it for a year and then I did it again. I stood again for the position. But my favorite ever experience as the activities chair of the Ottawa area was we did a Valentine's Day event. And the concept was like it was a bit of a board game night. We did it on Valentine's Day instead of making a big dance with like loud noises. And anyway, we did it on Valentine's Day, which was a Thursday that year. We had our little canteen with the coffee and the pop, and we did board games and speakers about relationships. And we got like one of everything kind of idea. And it was about interpersonal relationships and romantic relationships and friendships. And it was my favorite ever experience doing service. It was not a large event. It was not like wildly attended, but everybody who went had a really great time. And that's, to me, and there was a few newcomers who kind of sat down and I don't know. But yeah, I think that was one of my favorite experiences with service to date.
Jesse, how about you? Have you had any really memorable service experiences in NA?
I first realized that I had the gift of speaking when I started sharing at meetings, right? And then people would come up to me and say, "Jesse, I loved what you shared," and stuff like that. So that really gave me a lot of like self-confidence. I've spoken at a lot of like conventions, birthdays. When I was in Sault Ste. Marie, I was a circuit speaker for a while, which I really enjoyed. I remember when I was incarcerated, we were going out into the community. We had escorted temporary absences to meetings. And I remember one time they had asked me to speak. So I was coming from prison to speak at this meeting and go back. And it was such a great experience for me because a lot of people didn't know that I had come from prison and they found out after. And after they had heard my whole life story, they're like, "Well, you don't belong there." And it's really interesting once people hear your whole life story, and they just couldn't believe that I had to actually go back to the penitentiary, like after I was done speaking. And yeah, for me, that was one of my most memorable. I think for me, just being in prison, like I always believe like my outer world is a mere reflection of my inner world, right? And like being in prison to me was like an outer manifestation of like an inner prison of like solitary confinement. I always say that like I was serving a 3-year sentence, but on the inside, I felt like I'd given myself like a life sentence of solitary confinement by the walls that I had built. And you know what? In prison, I may have physically lost my freedom, but in turn, I gained freedom of choice, freedom from active addiction, and freedom from bondage of self. So to me, that was like just one of the most memorable experiences that I've like ever had.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. And Stefan, how about you?
Yeah, I think mine is pretty recent. It's just being part of the web team, and like it's been cool because I work in the tech industry, and so just being able to bring some of my skill set and a professional background into the service work and contribute to building out the website and kind of helping people do their service positions efficiently effectively just, yeah, it's been really nice to be part of the web team and just see the changes that we're making on the website. Because like during COVID, just the accessibility of meetings was really tough for newcomers. Like it's just, there's not the same in-person meetings, not the same like network that you can easily get access to. But also because we did work on the web team to make meetings easier to find, easier to access online through Zoom, added like a live chat feature where like someone could just text and message if they didn't feel like calling or didn't feel comfortable calling. There's also the accessibility reason, like if you're hard of hearing, having the only way to get meeting information being like calling in to get a recommendation from helpline, there's just like, oh, I can now message the website. So being part of kind of helping set up the live chat on the Toronto website was a really special kind of experience that blended some of my professional background with the recovery and being able to support people. That's been a really memorable experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Stefan. I'm wondering if we can switch gears a little bit now and talk a bit about our personal journeys in regards to our gender identity or sexual orientation. I know for me, it seemed like when I was new, I used it as a justification to feel different. It was a very, I looked at the steps and I saw male God, and, I read the sponsorship pamphlet, and, it recommended having a sponsor of the same gender. And little things like that made me question what was the right thing to do and what was right for me. So I'm wondering if you could maybe just talk a little bit about your own personal experiences coming into recovery in regards to that. And we'll start with Andrea.
My personal experience with like the whole gendering of things, and I also like the male God and the capital H for him. I didn't take a lot of comfort in that, and then I found other people who helped me through that. I actually didn't get clarity on my gender identity until I think it was about 2 years ago now. And I've only in the last year, thanks to Zoom actually, and seeing it more often, switched to the they, them pronouns and changed my Facebook. And I've always known I was not comfortable in a room full of women. When I could work, I worked as a professional cook. It was very male dominated society, like a feeling vibe and stuff. And I managed to fit in quite well. And most of my coworkers just assumed I was, pardon the phrase, but a bull dyke. And I let them assume that because it was easier. I've intermittently tried attending women's meetings because I have the bits to say I fit there. And yeah, that it hasn't really been a place of comfort and safety for me. And I'm okay with that now. I was very lucky early on to go to a meeting where a member who openly shared about anything and everything and always said, I'll give anybody my number because I don't, because anybody can read the text with anybody else. So if you're calling me to read the basic text, and that has nothing to do about what's in our pants. And saying men for men, women for women, it's if I'm a gay man and I have a gay like I have a man sponsor, I'm like, let's go do step work in the shower. Like that was his line, right? And it was like, it really brought the point home. And yeah, like I've managed, I've had sponsors of both genders. I haven't found a sponsor who identifies as non-binary. My current sponsor is phenomenal, and she doesn't make it about what's in our pants. You know what I mean? Being queer and being in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous has been straightforward journey for me. I'm truly grateful for that because like NA taught me that like it's because of Narcotics Anonymous that I can learn these things about myself. And it took me this long to figure it out because I didn't have a word for it. And then I was chatting with a newcomer at some place and they're like, oh yeah, I'm non-binary, but it's not a big deal. And I'm like, cool, what does that mean? And the way they gave me the information just simply without a judgment placed on it or like any recrimination towards me for not understanding, it like that gave me the skills to move forward and carried that same message. And yeah.
And Jesse, how about you?
For me, I was struggling with my gender for a while. I was actually incarcerated in a women's prison from 2015 to 2018. And that was such a significant point in my life because being around women really made me realize how much I wasn't a woman and how much I never viewed myself as a woman. You know, being in a woman's prison was very challenging for me. I didn't even know that transgender, I didn't know that that was a thing. I didn't know what that was. And then we started getting trans women coming into the prison. So I would talk to them about some of their experiences and stuff like that. So I really struggled in there with my gender identity. I am a trans man. Once I got out, I started to medically transition, but you know, it goes through. For me, I had to go through that awkward stage of being misgendered and stuff like that. Like I almost stopped going to meetings for a while in both fellowships just because I was tired of being referred to as she and her. I was actually embarrassed, to be honest with you. And it took me a while to pick a sponsor because I knew that I was a man and I wanted a man, but then I was overly concerned about what other people would think until this guy approached me at my home group and asked me if I wanted a sponsor. And that's when I kind of came out to him and told him that I was transgender, that I was transitioning, that my pronouns are he and him, and that, you know, I want a male sponsor. And he said, well, Jesse, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, go get a male sponsor. And yeah, I hate the whole genders and everything too. And I remember I was at a meeting once and I kind of had this intuitive nudge to go up to this person. I had never seen this person before. And I think people were referring to this person as Lisa, right? So I had in my mind, like men, how they say men stick with men, women stick with women. But something told me to give this person my number. So I went up and gave this person my number. And at the time, I had my pronouns on my name tag because it was my home group. And I remember this person messaging me after and saying, hey, Jesse, by the way, I go by Ethan and my pronouns are he, him. And he had said that he never told anybody that before. I was like, what are the odds? Like I was just really, it was unbelievable. It was just it was like, that was a higher power moment for sure.
Absolutely. That's incredible. That's goosebumps. I love hearing about stuff like that. That's so cool. Stefan, how about you?
I love hearing that story. That's amazing. That's that you found something that's great. And I guess for me, it's interesting. The first like 4-ish years of being in the program, I identified as straight. Had never really thought too much about it, but I think one of the things the program gave me was a ton of open-mindedness and like removing a lot of self-judgment. And yeah, it gave me, I guess, the freedom to actually explore my sexuality and figure out, yeah, like just, I don't know. I'd never thought of it and never been really open to the idea of queerness. And then just, yeah, really started to explore it and have found a nice, I guess, home for myself in kind of pansexuality, and that feels right to me. And so I guess it hasn't, it's still, I don't know, I feel like it's an ever evolving journey. It's still kind of figuring it out, exploring myself and being open with that. And then from a sponsorship perspective and kind of the intersection of that, I've only ever had male sponsors, like straight male sponsors. But for me, it was, I don't know, I was looking for a sponsor a while back, and I was just like talking to a couple like gay men, friends of mine, and I was like, what's the deal? Like, should it be like same gender or opposite sexual attraction? Like, what is the? And they were like, it doesn't matter. Just find someone that has what you want, and that you feel comfortable and safe with, that you can share, because it's that relationship is kind of the deepest, most trusting ones that you're going to have. It's got to be vulnerable for it to work and to go through the steps. So yeah, that's been kind of my journey exploring sexuality throughout the program.
The last question I have here is, what gifts have you received in service?
I don't even know that I could really count the gifts I've received in service. I there's no number, there's no quantifiable data for that. The gratitude I get from seeing it's kind of like the gifts I get from service are exactly like the gifts I get from recovery, right? Like I get in exactly, I get out exactly or more than what I've put in. And I've always approached service with knowing that it's not about me. Like my service background and all that, like it's always been about what does Narcotics Anonymous in my area need right now, and how can I be of service. So I guess the biggest gift of service I've received is the ability to like just humbly offer myself the opportunity to be of service to the people in my life. And and like the, oh man, I'm getting all emotional because like being able to, I did one H&I commitment in a prison because I decided I'd try all the flavors before I made any, solid decisions about my path in recovery, when I thought I had to set a path, um, and we got to take in literature. So that, like, being able to hand books to people has always been, and like them just being like, wait, you're just giving me a book? And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's yours. And they're like, you don't want it back? And I'm like, no, I got one too. The gifts of service are being able to give whatever I have in my heart to give, and sometimes getting to see the lights come on in somebody's eyes, right? Like that's what makes it all worth it, I don't even know if I answered the question, but now I'm all verklempt, and thank you.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
As a result of doing the 12 steps and taking care of the wreckage of the past, I was able to forgive myself, for my past. And when I did that, it no longer had power over me, and instead became my life story, which today is my greatest asset in helping others. Other gifts are, the ability to show up. It doesn't matter how I show up. I just need to show up and leave the results and the outcomes to my higher power. I first learned how to be a friend through people in Narcotics Anonymous, because when I first came into the program, I was selfish, dishonest, self-centered. I didn't know anything about being there for people. And today I'm an employable person. I'm reliable. I'm dependable. People can depend on me today. Another gift is like the relationship with a higher power. That has been tremendous. And I always say, like, giving service and stuff, it's showing my gratitude, right? Being grateful for being clean. And the feeling, it's the greatest feeling ever, like giving back, with no motive except for just wanting to give back out of like pure love. And for me, I just got asked to, the Crime Prevention Council and CGI are putting a video together of people from prison who were successful in finding employment and after prison. And I was one of those people that they asked to participate in that. And it's because people in prison said that they don't see people in prison who are successful. And one of the main things that I talked about that contributed to my success is being clean. Because I know that if I'm not clean, I don't have a job, I don't have a family, like I'm no good to anyone. So my recovery always has to come first.
Wow. Thanks, Jesse. It's amazing who we can affect just by being of service. We can affect, like, we'll never know how far the ripples of our actions go. And I think that's just so beautiful.
Before getting into this, it was like, oh, how fast can we do something? How efficient can we be? Can we keep moving? And whether like every single person or every voice is heard, like that wasn't the number one priority, but through service, just like getting a shift in mindset there of like, okay, no, like the goal here is not necessarily move as fast as possible and get stuff done, but it's like, let's make sure everyone's like voice is heard. Like the groups have the very important voice of the home groups are heard at the area, and we're working together to achieve an outcome versus just like, oh, it's okay if we completely leave some people behind and they're not heard. Like that shift in mindset for me, I think was really, really valuable. And has rippled throughout my life. And then I think as well through like more kind of like sponsorship and like one-on-one, like talking to newcomers. I think like you don't, kind of what you said earlier, you don't know the ripple effects of like what, like just sharing your story, your experience can have on someone's life. And so that feels like good to be helpful in some way to others. And I think I've also in my kind of like professional life, I'm open about being clean, and I don't necessarily talk about the program, but I share that I am clean and have gone through stuff. And I've had people approach me that have like relatives or siblings or something that are struggling and doing, and they don't know how to navigate it. They're not sure. So able to kind of direct them towards helpful resources. And yeah, so I guess those are a few different ways that some gifts that I've received.
Thanks, Stefan. And I love what you said about hearing all viewpoints. And it made me think, like, I had like super, super low self-esteem and a really low opinion of myself. And some of that was to do with my confusion around my sexual orientation, like when I was younger, and a lot of really negative feelings. And coming to NA and getting involved and being a part of really made me feel included, and it made me feel like I had something of value to offer. And so when I've been in business meetings or committee meetings or just talking one-on-one with another addict, and I feel like I'm being listened to, that makes all the difference in the world, because finally, like, my opinion, it counts, it matters. And I think that's huge to remember that we need to hear all viewpoints. I just want to ask everyone here, does anyone have a suggestion for the name of this episode? So the first episode, I pulled a quote from something that Catherine said during the interview, but we can do that, or we can think of another name. I like episode 2, Step Work in the Shower. I think that's pretty cool. Does anyone have any suggestions?
I think that's funny. I don't know.
I think that would definitely get some people's attention.
Yeah.
I don't know that it'd be the right attention, but
Yeah.
What about like stepping out of the box?
I like that too.
Ooh.
Good.
Oh.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh.
like
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Because the steps
Yeah.
helped me figure out that the box didn't fit, and I didn't have to fit in the box anymore.
Yes.
Oh.
Right?
Mm,
Oh yeah.
right?
We got it.
Oh.
That's it. We got it.
Yeah. Yep.
Good.
Thanks for listening. Join us next month for episode 3, where we'll hear from Arnie H., a former World Board member who has service experience from British Columbia all the way to the Middle East. Until next time, take care and keep coming back.